name is Javiria Yafet. I am a student at RBL History and I am going to talk about Henry VIII. Henry VIII was royalty, and royalty was simply said the following: people of royal blood or status. So they were people of a higher ranking with a certain kind of title, perhaps, and they ruled over a country, and Henry was one of them. Who is Henry? I think most people have heard of Henry at one point. I mean, he's mentioned quite a lot, even in elementary school and secondary school. He's quite famous. Henry was the King of England from 1509 to 1547, so until his death. He was best known for his 6 marriages and his efforts to have his first marriage annulled. We'll talk about this later. Henry was also known for his radical changes to the English constitution and for expanding royal power during his reign. He, for example, broke with the Pope and with Rome. He broke with the Church and started a new one, basically. Anyway, he achieved many of his political aims through the work of his ministers. Some of these ministers were eventually banished when they fell out of Henry's favour, and that happened very easily. And not to forget, Henry loved spending. This was one of the reasons he was on the verge of ruin. He spent too much money, and that wasn't all. He also fought many battles, mostly in his youth, and battles and wars also cost money, of course, and his entertainment also cost money. So yeah, he loved spending, and this was one of the reasons England was on the verge of ruin, thanks to him. Henry had 6 marriages, which is quite a lot for just one man. And I'm not going to talk about all of them because that would be too much, and some of them are just plain boring, no offense. I'm going to talk about wife number 1. Wife number 1 was Catherine of Aragon, and she was previously married to Henry's older brother, but Henry's older brother passed away, and thus Catherine eventually married Henry. Well, during their marriage, Henry conducted an affair with Catherine's lady-in-waiting, Mary Boleyn. And Mary Boleyn is one of the 2 famous Boleyn sisters. She's obviously not the most famous one because this one didn't get beheaded, but she is still pretty famous and known for her affair with Henry VIII. And they even claim that the 2 children Mary had are the sons of Henry, but of course they can't and they couldn't prove that. And this was the reason her children were never acknowledged as Henry's children. Anyway, Henry got impatient with Catherine for not being able to produce a male heir who stayed alive. She did, in fact, produce some male children, but they all died. They died, and Mary Tudor was the only survivor of their children. And Mary obviously isn't a male, but Henry needed a male heir because the Tudor line could only be, he could only, I can't find the right words. Oh my god, this is not fun. Anyway, he needed a male successor so the Tudor line could live on. Well, eventually Anne Boleyn, the very famous sister of the 2 Boleyn sisters, caught his eye. Anne Boleyn was also a lady-in-waiting of Catherine of Aragon, and Henry thought that perhaps Anne would be able to grant him a male heir. and as he wanted to annul his marriage to Catherine, he blamed her age for not being able to conceive a son. She was 40 after all, and when he went to the Pope and asked for an annulment, he also said said something like, yeah, but she was also the wife of my brother, so this isn't fair. I should get a new wife, blah 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 blah, something like that. Well, the Pope obviously didn't agree. The Pope would never grant him his wish because, like I said before, Catherine was the aunt of Charles V, and Charles V was the one who had the Pope in his power. The Pope had to listen to Charles, and Charles would never let Henry get a divorce from his aunt. He wouldn't accept that. So, yeah, Henry, this caused some drastic measures from Henry, and yeah, it resulted in the English Church, and that they broke from the Pope and Rome. It was very drastic. The English Reformation. I call this the love child of wanting a divorce from Catherine of Aragon or not being able to get it. So, telling the world you're not following the Catholic Church anymore. This is the love child of that. Well, England went from a Catholic country to a Protestant one. They didn't follow the Pope and the Catholic Church anymore. And like I said before, Henry had as reason that he needed a male heir, and Catherine wasn't able to give him one. So when Henry asked the Pope to annul his marriage, the Pope said no, because he, of course, was was under control of Charles V, who was the nephew of Auntie Catherine of Aragon. So yeah, this led from one thing to another, and caused for this love child. The English Reformation. Yes, there are two rhymes about Henry and his wives, and I'm going to read them because they're quite funny, and I think everyone should hear about them. The first one is, King Henry VIII, to 6 wives he was wedded. 1 died, 1 survived, 2 divorced, 2 beheaded. It's quite funny, isn't it? The second, Boleyn and Howard had lost their heads, and of Cleves he would not bet. Jane Seymour gave him a son, but he died before the week was done. Aragon he did divorce, which just left Catherine Parr, of course. Yeah. They're very short, these rhymes, but they're nice. I like them. On the screen, you can see the 6 wives of Henry. The first was Catherine of Aragon. Her marriage got annulled. She got a divorce, and she didn't die while being married to Henry. She never got beheaded like the others. The second wife was Anne Boleyn. Her marriage was annulled 2 days prior her execution, and then she got beheaded at the Tower of London. The third wife was Jane Seymour. Jane Seymour passed away 12 days after giving birth to a child who also passed away. Anne of Cleves, her marriage to Henry got annulled because Henry thought she was too ugly and he didn't want to be married to her. Catherine Howard, she got beheaded. She is also the one I spoke about in my essay about Hampton Court and about the haunted gallery. She is one of the interesting wives. She made Hampton Court interesting, if you'd ask me. She wasn't particularly interesting. She was young, stupid, and died. She got beheaded at the Tower of London. And last but not least, we have Catherine Parr, and she survived. She was victorious. She survived, and Henry died before her. How wonderful is that? Well, one of the reasons Henry um, got so famous was because of his 6 marriages and his claim that his wives were adulterers, and they couldn't conceive sons and children. He was just a very dramatic man. Oh, Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, and Jane Seymour all gave Henry children, who eventually also ascended the throne as King Edward, Queen Mary, and Queen Elizabeth. So the Tudor line didn't exactly die immediately with them. Catherine Howard and Anne Boleyn were also first cousins. They were both beheaded at the Tower of London. It's quite comical if you'd ask me. Jane and Anne were second cousins, and Catherine Howard and Jane were also second cousins. Several of Henry's wives worked in service to another wife while they were queen. They were the ladies in waiting. It's quite comical how Henry all picked ladies in waiting as his wives. It's also kind of disgusting if you'd ask me, but okay. Different times, different values. So I'm not judging. Well, I kind of am, but I'll shut up. I'm sorry. Last but not least, I'd like to talk about Henry's health. In his younger years, Henry was quite athletic, and some would even say he was dashing. I don't agree with that. He wasn't dashing at all, but okay. Let's not talk about my opinion. Henry suffered from obesity at a later stage in his life. He had a waist measurement of 140 centimeters, which is quite big, if you'd ask me. And he had to be moved around with the help of mechanical devices because he couldn't move around on himself anymore. He couldn't do it alone, so he needed help. And many of his medical problems can be traced to the adjusting accident in 1536. He suffered a leg wound back then, and the accident reopened and aggravated an injury he had sustained years earlier. It is also believed that thanks to this accident, Henry had severe mood swings, which had dramatic effect on his temperament and on the way he acted. He eventually died at the age of 55. Not very surprising, because he had a very bad health. He had pus coming out of his body, and he was way too big, and he just didn't live healthy enough. And if you don't live healthy, you'll die eventually, quicker than later. Everyone dies, but if you don't live healthy, you'll die earlier, most likely, because your arteries will get filled with dirt and grease, and it isn't good for you, and it will make clots. And yeah, Henry just didn't take good care of himself, so he died eventually at the age of 55. And one of his wives survived him. She was the victor. She was victorious.